This is Genesis 50 and 1. And Joseph fell upon his father's face and wept upon him and kissed him.
Wait a minute. Jacob still laid up dead in the bed. Joseph kissed him.
Yep.
So what part of him was in the bed dead? This is what Jesus was telling you about. His soul was gathered to the place where his ancestors' soul was gathered, which Jesus let us know in the Greek is called Hades. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to another edition of The Absolute Truth.
This is Luke chapter 16, verse 19. And there was a rich man, which was clothed in purple and fine linen, and fared sumptuously every day.
Now, this
And
is
there was a
Jesus
certain
telling this story. This is Jesus telling the way purple was like a color of royalty. That means you had some money. And fine linen, meaning the best clothes, and fared sumptuously every day. Okay? Keep reading, please, sir.
Luke 16 and 20. And there was a certain beggar named at his gate, full of sores, and
And
desired.
a certain beggar named Lazarus, not to be confused with the Lazarus that Jesus rose from the dead. This is not the same Lazarus, right?
Right.
And there was a certain beggar named Lazarus, the gate of the rich man, full of, continue, please.
21. And from the rich man's table. Moreover, the dogs came and licked his sores.
So Lazarus was so poor, he from the rich man's table. And it said, moreover, the dogs came, and just for a side note, you will find out that the saliva that dogs have healing properties
Yes,
for
sir.
wounds. So that's why, they used to let these dogs lick their wounds sometimes. You can look this stuff up, right? But continue.
This is Luke 16 and 22. And it came to pass that the beggar died and was carried by the angels into Abraham's bosom. The rich man also died and was buried.
Now it says, and it came to pass that the beggar, Lazarus, died and was carried by the angels into Abraham's died and was buried. Now, you have to admit, whatever Jesus is talking about, you haven't read anything about somebody dying. What about you, Dre? GiDeon? You ain't read anything like that. Jesus talking about. Yes, it's a parable, but since when did Jesus ever make parables that are just completely foreign to what the Hebrews knew about? I'll tell you a story of be carried by angels into Abraham's bosom. And when it talks about Abraham's bosom, it just means like y'all hugged up, like you know how you see people, or he's inclined, like he chilling to like incline or decline on a couch, right? Like he laid back chilling with Abraham like that. But watch what verse 23 says. Read that.
Luke, in hell he lifted up his eyes, being in torments, and seeing Abraham afar off, and Lazarus in his bosom.
See, already as a Christian, you have to ask yourself, if you believe that when you die, if you go to hell, then how could Abraham and Lazarus see this rich man, and how could this rich man see them? Because it said, and in hell, he lifted up his eyes. I mean, he looked up from hell and seeth Abraham afar off and Lazarus in his bosom. How close do y'all think, if you believe that this is talking about heaven, how close do you Christians believe heaven is to hell? You got to ask yourself if you're teaching, which a lot of Christians do, that Abraham's bosom refers to heaven. So heaven is so close to hell that people in hell can look up and see you afar off, even identify you. You follow what I'm saying? Because we're going to see that he recognized who these people were. So even though it says they were afar off, they weren't too far off that he didn't recognize them from a distance. All be in the same place this rich man is in. But why would God send righteous Abraham and righteous Lazarus to hell? That's the only other explanation. Then you're like, well, why would he do that? Because what a lot of Christians don't understand is that in the Greek and in the Hebrew, hell did not always refer to a bad place. Entry number 80 concordance. And the word is Hades. Two, so that means it's from two Greek words. This is what it means. Properly unseen. So the first definition of Hades is an unseen place. So Luke 16, 24 to 26. We're going to learn some more about this story. Go ahead. Somebody said 1080p. The one, I'm not 1080, but what the lowest one? The lowest resolution you can get. They clown him. Y'all need to stop. Y'all be good in that chat. Be good, y'all. Be good. Right? But go ahead and read.
Okay, this is Luke 16 and 24. He cried and said, Lazarus, that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool my tongue flame.
And see, when you read stuff like this, all you have to do is just be observant. Apparently, look what it says. And he cried and said, Father Abraham, meaning, even though it says they were far off, they were still close enough for him to know that that's Abraham, right? Have mercy on me and send Lazarus that he may water. So one thing we just learned, y'all, is that wherever Abraham and Lazarus were in Hades, there was water, right? And it says that he may dip the tip of his finger in water and cool. So now we just learned fire that tormented him.
Mm-hmm.
So here's another thing you also just learned. Wherever all of this is taking place, this rich man believed that Lazarus was close enough to be able to walk over to him and cool his tongue by dipping it in water. Continue. Watch what Abraham says to him. Go ahead.
But Abraham said, receiveth thy good things, and likewise Lazarus evil things. But now he is comforted.
So they're close enough to have audible conversation. They can hear each other and communicate. He heard the request of the rich man. They're close enough to each other where they can hear each other and have conversation. But continue reading. It's going to explain itself. Go ahead.
Luke 16 and 26. And beside all this, between us and you, there is a great gulf fixed, so that they which would pass from hence to you cannot, neither can they pass to us that would come from thence.
Look what it said. And besides all this, wanted to help you, there's a great gulf fixed. There's like a great chasm or a pit, a gigantic hole, like a Grand Canyon. Right? There's a great gulf fixed, so that they which would pass from here to you cannot. So we can't come to you, neither can they pass to us that would come from this. And you and everybody being tortured with you cannot come to us. Read the next verse.
This is Genesis 25 and 9. And his sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him in a cave of Machpelah, in the field of Ephron, the son of Zohar, the Hittite, which is before Mamre.
Did y'all notice that was gathered to his people? Then he was buried. That's kind of out of order, isn't it? If the gathering is the burial, why does it say he died and was gathered to his people, then he was buried?
Right.
Because I'm going to prove to you that when it says he was gathered to his people, it's talking about the same thing Jesus was talking about when it said the angels carried Lazarus. This gathering that you're reading about is talking about the angels gathering Abraham's soul. We're going to read one verse. Verse 33. Genesis 49 and 33.
49 and 33. And when Jacob had made an end of commanding his sons, he gathered up his feet into the bed and was
up his feet into the bed firm, and he balled up. Then it says, and yielded up the ghost, which means he breathed his last breath. And telling me that gathered to his people meant a physical burial. Go right over to the next one, Kevin.
This is Genesis 50 and 1. And Joseph fell upon his father's face and wept upon him and kissed him.
Wait a minute. Jacob still laid up dead in the bed. Joseph kissed him.
Yep.
So what part of him was in the bed dead?
Spirit.
This is what Jesus was telling you about. His soul was gathered to the place where his ancestors' soul was gathered, which Jesus let us know in the Greek is called Hades. But keep reading. We're going to read all the way to verse 5 because we're going to let you know that this one was drugged out. This death, like the physical body, what they did with it, they drugged this one out because it already said in Genesis 49:33 that he was gathered to his people. But keep
Genesis 50:2. And Joseph commanded his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. And the physicians embalmed Israel.
they're embalming his body, but it just said he was gathered to his people when he died. Physically been gathered, they're embalming his body.
Mm-hmm.
They haven't even buried him yet. That's how long they're gonna drag this out. Keep reading.
Genesis 50:3. And for so fulfilled the days of those which are embalmed. And the Egyptians mourned for him 60 days.
So they mourned, took 40 days for the embalming process. That's just how they did it, right? And overall, the Egyptians mourned for him 60 days, which is 70 days. So 70 days, and they ain't even stuck this man in the ground yet.
Nope.
But the last verse of the last chapter said he was gathered to his people when he died.
So,
His soul, his spirit. That's what was gathered to him. And how was it gathered? Jesus told you in the story of Lazarus and the gathered his soul to the place of the dead. Reading your Bible and you paying attention, you see this right here. But I'm going to show you another example of it, right? But keep reading.
This is
Watch what
4.
Joseph says.
This is 4. And when the days of his mourning were past, Joseph spake unto the house of Pharaoh, saying, If now I have found grace in your eyes, speak. Pharaoh saying, Swear, saying, Lo, I die in my grave. There shalt thou bury me. Now therefore let me go up, I pray thee, and bury my father, and I will come again.
See, notice that after all of this, it says that Joseph asked Pharaoh if he could take his father and bury him there because that's what his father asked him in the ground yet. So, in what sense was he gathered to his people when he died if they went through a whole embalming process for 40 days, plus the overall mourning was 70 days? And then you got to account for the time spent to make the trip to Canaan. Let's go to Numbers chapter 20. We're going to read about Aaron, Moses' older brother. Let's see what it says about him. Because this was a Hebrew idiom. When they talked about it, it meant your soul was carried by angels to the place where your ancestors' soul were. You're joining your ancestors in the world of the dead. Your spirit is. Right? But we're going to show you that. Numbers 20, 23 to 29. Numbers 20, 23 to 29. When you get there, read.
And 23. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Edom, saying, He gathered unto his people, for he shall not enter into the land which I have given unto the children. My word at the water of Meribah.
And now we know by now that gathered to your people is just now a euphemism for dying in general. Right? But he said, Aaron shall be gathered to his people. If this is talking about a physical gathering, that means that but Aaron should be laid to rest in a place where all of his ancestors and relatives are. To the top of Mount Hor, and keep reading.
26. And strip Aaron of his garments, and put them upon Eleazar his son, and Aaron and shall die there.
Added to his people and die there.
7. And Moses did as the Lord kept the congregation
Mm-hmm.
upon Eleazar his son, and Aaron came down from the mount.
And it. On the top of a mountain. And if you read Deuteronomy 10, it tells you he was buried there too. What people was he physically gathered to if his body was buried alone on the top of a mountain? What people was he physically gathered to, y'all? It could have been talking about a physical gathering because his body was on top of a mountain. He didn't have any ancestors, burials up there with him, any relatives.
Nope.
So what does it mean when it says he was gathered to his people? God told Moses, Aaron shall be gathered to his people. If you try to make it physical, you're making God a liar. Because his body was not anywhere near any of his relatives. They buried him on top of the mountain, and Moses and Eleazar came back down by themselves.
Yeah.
How's that a physical gathering?
This Numbers 27, verses 12. And the Lord said unto this Mount Abraham, I want to say Abraham, unto the children of Israel. And when thou hast seen it, thou also shalt be gathered unto thy people, as Aaron thy brother was gathered.
Now look what it says. And the Lord said unto Moses, get thee up into Mount Abarim and see the land which I have given unto the children of Israel. I want you to stand on this mountain and view the land, the promised land. You also shall be gathered unto your people as Aaron your brother was gathered. And by now, we know that gathered to your people is just a euphemism for saying you're going to die. But why is death described as a gathering? And it's not a physical gathering because Aaron was buried alone on the top of Mount Hor with no relatives or ancestors up there with him. He was gathered to his people if he wasn't physically gathered to them. I mean, his soul went spirit world, which Jesus called the Hebrew equivalent for it. Deuteronomy 34, verses 5 and 6. Read that, please.
This is Deuteronomy 34, verses 5. And it reads, so Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab, according to the word of the Lord.
And you just read that word in Numbers 27, 12 and 13. Right? Go ahead.
Yep. 6. And he buried him in the valley in the land of Moab, over against Beth Peor. But no man knoweth of his sepulchre until this day.
Wait a minute. God first told Moses he was going to be gathered to his people. Then it tells you that God himself buried Moses alone in Moab in a place where nobody even know where he's buried. Physically, when he was buried in an unknown burial site, what people was he gathered to? Moabites were not Moses' people. So what people was he gathered?
Brother Josh.
So how was he gathered? His soul was gathered by those angels, just like Jesus told you what happened in Luke 16. I see him. Go ahead, JiDion.
Oh, okay.
I was gonna say, didn't like some angels fight over, like, didn't the devil and some angels fight over his body?
They disputed over his body. Yes, his body.
So was that them trying to gather it, or was it just his body?
His body. It just says his body. Yes, it don't say anything about his soul. They just disputed over his body. This is 4th Maccabees, chapter 18. Let me show you what the Hebrews believed, and we're going to read verses 21 to 23.
Y'all can read
4th Maccabees, chapter 18. This is after this woman and her 7 sons said they refused to eat the pork and they were tortured for it. We dealt with this in the Hanukkah class. But watch what they said they knew was going to happen. Go ahead and read, Kel.
So this is 18 and 21. It says he pierced the ball. He pierced the balls of their eyes and cut out their tongues with varied tortures.
That's what Antiochus Epiphanes did to this woman and her 7 sons. He pierced their eyeballs. That means he plucked them, gouged them out, and cut out their tongues and put them to death with varied tortures, all because they didn't want to eat pork. They didn't even want to taste it. Nope. Read verse 22.
22. Wherefore divine retribution pursued and will pursue the pestilence, the pestilent wretch.
It said, wherefore divine retribution, that means payback from the Lord, pursued and will pursue the pestilent wretch, talking about Antiochus Epiphanes. But read verse 23. Watch what it says.
23. But the children of Abraham, with their victorious mother, are assembled together to the choir of their fathers, having received pure and immoral souls from God.
Now, wait a minute. It said, but the children of Abraham, those 7 sons, with their victorious mother, assembled together. Tell y'all something. Isaiah 14, verse 9. When you get there, Kev.
Isaiah 14:9. To meet thee at thy coming. It stirred up the dead for thee, even all the chief ones of the earth. It hath
Now,
raised up.
continue. It has done what?
It has raised up their thrones all the kings of the nations.
Now, it said, this is talking about hell from beneath is moved for thee to meet thee at thy coming. The thee that is talking about in this verse is talking about the king of Babylon. This is saying hell from beneath is moved for the king of Babylon to meet him when he goes to hell. And notice it said that these ghosts or the spirits of the departed are located in this Sheol, which is Hades. This is what Jesus was talking about. But did y'all notice that it puts these wicked kings and the wicked king Sheol or Hades?
Mm-hmm.
Did y'all notice that? So let me ask y'all a question just to make sure y'all been paying attention. If the wicked king of Babylon went to Sheol or Hades, and all these other kings that already died went to Sheol or Hades, which is the world of the dead, the place of departed souls, which is why they translated in the CSB, the place of departed spirits. Who do y'all think they were with when they went there? Do y'all think they were hugged up with Abraham and Lazarus? Or do y'all think they were where the rich man was? Y'all tell me in the chat and on Clubhouse. Where do you think they went? Where do you think they went? Are we correct?
Right.
Because everybody went there before Jesus died on the cross.